welcome to Elite Men Podcast today. I have two very good friends of mine, Mr. Mandre and Marcus. Today we're going to be talking about what does financial wealth look long term in people's family. So this is something that's been really touching my heart lately. Is how do we talk about finances, the way we grew up, and how do we get to long term financial wealth? So I'm gonna let these men explain a little bit about themselves, so they can give you kind of an introduction on how they grew up and a little bit about their financial background growing up as a child. And we're gonna dive into some good questions. Dre, go ahead and tell us a little bit about your financial.
Yeah. So Mandre Collins, I currently work for Mercedes-Benz Financial Services doing project management. And outside of that, I run a lot of individual companies, businesses, if you will, with Real Axe LLC, an axe throwing company. I have a servant woodworking company, which is a servant leadership company that I have as well. And then on top of that, I also help my wife, who has two individual businesses as well, with her own clothing line, and she does photography throughout the DFW area. So that's kind of some things that we have going for us right now. But growing up, I was not a wealthy kid. I wasn't born in money. My mom and dad worked super hard to make ends meet, and even going off to college. That was a real experience for me, because a lot of things that I had to be able to muster up and kind of work my tail off to be able to provide while I was finally being on my own when I left the nest. So generational wealth did run deep in my family, and so that's why I'm excited to be able to talk about this topic today, because what I went through as a child, I will make sure that my children don't have to carry the same burden.
That's what's up. What about you, Marcus? Man, give us a little bit about your background with finances, where you grew up, and what do you do for your job currently?
Absolutely. Marcus Wilson here. Like Mandre, we work together at Mercedes-Benz Financial Services. I got a couple businesses on the side with a clothing brand called Unwavering Clothing that I started a couple years ago with my wife. She's the co-owner. And then also I do personal training on the side, licensed life insurance agent as well too. And then I also run a boot camp class on Sundays as well to work out with. And just growing up, come from I would say a middle class family. Never came from generational wealth. Never came from a lot of money. Born on the East Coast. Lived in Connecticut, New York, Jersey, D.C. area, and a lot of my family either was in the military, which is why I lived in so many different states and moved around a lot, or my family worked at IBM. After coming from the military, my grandfather, my grandmother, two of my aunts, my mom and my dad all worked for IBM at different levels within the organization. So even though we didn't have a lot of money, still learned a lot about discipline, work ethic, and how to take care of your money even when you have very little. And then being able to take that money that they had and relocate it down to Houston, taking the East Coast salary allowed us to live more of a middle class lifestyle coming to Texas with the cost of living down here. So really learned a lot of principles from my family, especially my mom, my dad, and especially my grandparents as well too, how to take care of money long term even without having a lot. So that's how it was for me.
Well, that's good. I'll tell you a little bit about me. I'm a service application engineer at a company called Heatcraft. So I currently just, when they build something, I go out and I make sure that it's built to specs, or if whoever designs it, that it's designed to whatever it's supposed to do. I grew up really, I didn't grow up poor, but I didn't grow up rich. I kind of grew up to where my mother did the best and my father did the best that they could. So I didn't grow up with any type of generational wealth, or even understanding what generational wealth was to my family or anybody. You know what I'm saying? We kind of just grew up and you got money, you spent it, which kind of, as I got older and I was married, it kind of put me into a bad bind of debt. So we're going to jump into this topic. This is going to be a two-part series on finances. So the first question I'm going to ask, and I'm going to throw this to Marcus about. What do financial generational wealth look like to your family currently, by you being educated on understanding a little bit about finance? How do you set your family up for that long-term generational wealth, so your kids don't suffer, your wife don't suffer, those type of things?
Yeah, for me, it's really having the resources to pass down in order to create that generational wealth. And often we think about finances being the only source anything that holds any type of value, a boat, etc., on top of having money at the end of the day too.
Right.
Because even just having a house isn't always a great thing. People look at the word mortgage. If you break that word up, the root cause of that mort comes from mortuary, which means death.
Right.
And then
Let's go.
gauge is really a French word that means gahe,
Right.
which is loan.
Yeah.
So a mortgage is really a death loan at the end of the day, the way they credited it back in the day. So you want to get that paid off as soon as you can,
Yeah.
because really you're paying double the amount of house that you bought it for than what you're going to be paying over time with the interest rates and everything else. But really educating myself as much as I can when it comes to finances, financial literacy in every way possible. Life insurance is another thing that's big as well too.
Like you said,
That's why I got licensed in life insurance and really learned a lot about it during 2020 during COVID and everything like that. Whether it's whole life, term life, there's a lot of different policies that you can get out there to set your family up long term. And then even through whole life, you can have those type of policies to be able to live off of while you're still living as well too, and not have to wait until you pass away in order for your family to reap those benefits. Wills, trust, all that type of information plays into a lot of generational wealth. You look at a lot of actors and artists and athletes, just famous people throughout history. A lot of them didn't have any type of will, trust, life insurance, anything.
right.
When Martin Luther King got assassinated, his family got $800
Ooh,
to their name.
I didn't know that.
They are still fighting in court to this day for his Nobel Peace Prize, which is around $65,000. So everything that he did, that we read about throughout history books, learned in school and everything like that, he was only worth $800.
Wow.
Many of us have more than that in the bank at this point.
Right.
And then also learning the difference between spending, saving, and investing.
Right.
And we think about rich people who have all this money and stuff like that. Being poor and being rich is how you spend your money, how you use your money, and not how much money you have.
Right.
A poor person will spend all their money. You can have $1 million a year, and you can spend $1.2 million a year. You are poor. Middle class people save money.
Right.
They just put all their money in the savings accounts, but you're really not making any money off of that. And then you got rich people that invest money, whether it be in the stock market, we can talk about that later, investing into different companies, investing in a house, mortgages, real estate, all that type of stuff as well too. And I read an article last year during COVID, and it said 33% of millionaires make less than $80,000 a year.
It's probably true.
So
I agree.
it's not about how much money you're making, it's what you're doing with your money at the end of the day. So building myself up educational wise from stuff that I didn't necessarily learn from my mom, my dad, my grandparents, or in school, because they really don't teach any of this stuff in school,
Right.
is really what's made a big difference for me to set my family up in the future.
I like that. What about you,
That's
Dre?
good. That's
I like to talk to Dre also about this subject because he's got a family of 10, and it gives anybody excuse out there that said that they struggling with a family of 2 or 3. This man has definitely came out to hustle and understand financial wealth from a different perspective.
Absolutely.
So when people give an excuse about I can't do something, man, this man has overcame that. So Dre, give me a little bit about your story, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Marcus, you said a mouthful, man. And quite frankly, man, I'm going to piggyback on some of the things that you said because it really pertains to me as well. And I'll start with this, right? Because we're biblical men, right?
Right.
And I think first and foremost, when I look at Proverbs 13, 2 things jump out to me. Verse 11 says that a man who gains wealth hastily, it dwindles. But the one who accumulates it a little bit over time, right, then he will increase it. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is 22, when it says that a good man, or some versions may say good people, they leave an inheritance to their children's children. And that verse sticks to me. It really stands out to me every time I read it because it doesn't say just my children. It says that my children's children. So when you think about the depth of that verse alone, that means that my drive has to be even more driven. I have to be more alert. I have to be more into things to be able to make things happen as God allows it to happen. And so for me, it very much is about being able to leave an inheritance for all of my children,
Right.
but even more importantly, their children, And so I know that as a father, I've got to be out there grinding and doing the things that God has called me to do. And I think a lot of that starts right there with the hands of the talents and the abilities that God has given each and every one of us as men.
Right on.
Right? I talked earlier on about some of the things that I do, right, with Servanthood Designs, which is my woodworking company. That was something that I just kind of mustered up with my hands, right? And over time, it has gained and proven itself to be profitable, to be able to help other men to be able to go out and pick up on a trade to where they too can provide for their families. And so that to me is kind of that generational wealth. It's not just the passing down of money or assets of houses, right? I am not a fan and never will be a fan of being a slave to the lender. I don't think anybody in this room, anybody watching, would disagree with me on that. And so when it comes to making sure that we are living our life as debt-free as possible, that is the goal to financial freedom. And so when you have freedom, you are more likely to be able to help other people. Again, love God, love people, so it's fitting to the commandment. So we see ourselves being, there's not a burden, there's not a roadblock for us actually doing and fulfilling God's purpose. So that's true generational wealth for me. And we can tap into some of the other things that we're doing individually here in a bit, Sean, I know.
Right.
But I just wanted to kind of lay that out.
I like everything that these gentlemen said because, you know, I think as a believer, you got to start to hang around people that has a thought process to want to succeed or do more than what you're doing, right? It always say you're the middle. The 5 people that you hang around with, you're the balance of that. You're the middle of that. So the 5 people that's pouring into your life, that's what you're going to become, right? So I started hanging around people that understood finances, understood the way that God designed for us to get finances, right? Because you can go get money, right? And you can be the most successful person, not have any joy behind that, right? Let's not always just say that having money is going to make you happy, right? Because there's times where you can have money, you have no joy, right? So the biggest piece is in the process of getting money that you have God with you, right? Even when me and Dre did the Real Axe Company, right? We still make sure that we build and we still make sure. Dre called me the other day. He said, "Hey, Sean, there's a thing that XCC do, which is an extreme challenge character, right? To where men has to go out in the woods for a while and they have to go ahead and survive and you do it the way God would do it, right?" He said, "How about we take our business and see if we can just help get some money and some funds for that, right? The Real X." And I said, "I like that because we can take our time and use our business to help grow other men. And so by us owning the business and having that, we able to contribute and help people out." So for me, having wealth and me getting that, at first I thought I was a failure because I didn't have a certain amount of money in the bank, right? But something that Marcus said, right? I was able to purchase me a house, right? Try to pay my house off fast. I was able to have a lot of things that my parents didn't have that I was able to get, you know what I'm saying? But enough about me. I want to talk a little bit about the stock market, right? Because somehow when we talk about the stock market, you think that you got to have thousands of dollars, right? I remember 2 or 3 years ago, I told Dre, I said, "Hey man, listen, man, you know, we can play with the stock market with $25, right? Just a little something. He took it way further than me. He would call me and say, "Hey man, I made about $2 grand today." I said, "What?" He said, "Man, I got my money got out," right? I'm like, "Man, I'm doing something wrong," you know what I'm saying? But it was something that we just learned to do and play around with. But I'm gonna talk a little. Marcus know a little bit about the stock market too. Mark, tell a little bit something about what you're doing in the stock market.
Yeah, there's several platforms that people can use nowadays. A lot of platforms people can actually use nowadays to get started in the stock market. One of the biggest things is to not be afraid of the stock market. It's there to help you if you utilize it correctly. I was always afraid of the stock market up until probably 5, 6, 7 years ago, to where I finally got into it small, because I always had the mindset that I didn't want to lose my money. And then learning how the stock market can grow your money, I was like, all right, I'm gonna start with like $5, $10, $20, like you said. Wasn't playing with the big money, but now I am. And there's different platforms, whether you're using TD Ameritrade, Fidelity. There's an app called Robinhood. I like that app because it allows you to do not only stocks but crypto as well too.
Right.
So I'm heavy in the cryptocurrency, which is a digital currency for people that don't know. But also looking at the S&P 500 on a daily basis, a weekly basis, and everything like that too, which is the Standard & Poor's 500, and it's the performance of the 500 largest companies listed on the stock exchanges every single day, and taking those averages out of there. But The biggest thing for that is looking at what's low at that time. When stuff is dropping like it is right now,
Right.
during recession, they're not saying we're in a recession, but the GDP, once that hits in the negatives 2 months in a row, you are technically in a
So
recession.
somebody that don't know what GDP means, what does that mean, man? A person who don't
Gross
follow
domestic product,
Okay.
and it's taking the average of those products that we see all around us and
Right.
what those averages are. That went into the negatives a couple months ago, 2 months in a row. And once that happens 2 months in a row, they technically mark that as a recession.
Okay.
They're just not calling it a recession in the news yet, which they will be in 2023 at some point in time. But even though we're going through it with the inflation and everything else that we're seeing around us, the interest rates are skyrocketing and everything, the housing market skyrocketing and everything, and then we see the stock market going down. I look at times like this as no different from a discount at a clothing store.
Right.
You see 70% off, 80% off, and everything like that.
Yeah.
Especially with crypto,
Yeah.
some stuff is dropping down to pennies and cents.
Yeah.
That's the more time to buy in at that point, and then you want to sell high. Buy low, sell high, and the biggest thing right now is holding. Yes, I've lost money in my stocks right now, whether it be a stock or a crypto, but I'm holding for the long term.
Right.
Because,
Okay.
yeah, exactly. You don't want to just take out your money so quick, and then all of a sudden you just made a couple $100s or a couple $1,000s.
Right.
I'm holding for the long term where this turns into actual millions
Right.
and even beyond that. So that's the biggest thing for me.
I like that. Dre, what about you, man? What's something that you gained from the stock market or some way that avenue
Well,
that you
man, I think first and foremost, man, I kind of learned early on when I first, one of my internships out of college was working for an investment firm.
Right.
And so that's where I really had a couple guys, man, that really kind of held my hand and walked me through not only the importance of stocks, the one to be able to understand them, but the importance of being able to see the value long term for stocks and bonds. And I think that what Marcus is saying is super important. I hope everybody who's listening took heed to that. Is that it really is a long term game. Too many people miss out simply because of FOMO, right? Which is the fear of missing out. And a lot of people see stuff dropping down, and then they make these knee-jerk reactions where they're diving into these stocks when the value is really high because you don't want to miss out, right? And then you have some people that it's dropping, and you jump ship and you miss the upturn. And so you kind of look at it both different ways. I would tell you that crypto has a very high risk, but associated with that at the same time, it's kind of that no risk, no reward type of thought process. So I would say, man, to anybody who is actually going through it, look, there's low yield, there's high yield stocks that you can be a part of. And so I would say, man, enter into something as simple as a savings account, right? That is allowing your money to grow. Because at the end of the day, you want your money to be able to work for you. If I put $1,000 in my bank account and it sits there for a whole year, all I have is just that $1,000. But if I can sit that $1,000 into a savings account and it grows $1,100, then I've gained. But I did nothing to make that. I didn't work. I didn't have to do anything. My money was literally working for me. I just made the wise decision and did the research and put it where it needed to be. So I would say, man, that is absolutely something that we have that is an advantage. Stocks, bonds, crypto. Hey, enter it at your own risk, but I guarantee you that it does yield results. I have seen it. He's seen it. Sean has seen it. And I think that everybody here will as well. So
I always say, man, something I did when I first got a stock market, I played with $25, right? It was something small, but I would find dollar stocks, right? I'll find something that's $1, $2, you know what I'm saying? Something that wasn't big. If I lost money, it wouldn't affect me, right? And once I got in and understood it, I started to play a little bit more money, right? I upped it to $1,000, right? Because I'm like, okay, man, I'm starting to understand this, right? It doesn't take a lot of money to make money, right? Everybody goes and they may spend, I don't know, $75 to $100 on meals per month, right? If you take half of that and you put toward the stock market, it'll bring you money, right? American Airlines, I think he told me about Dogecoin and a couple other ones, right? It's really pennies to get involved, right? But he made a statement to me when I talked to him, Marcus. He said, hey, if you wait long term, this can blow up any moment, right? It might take 5 to 6 years, right? He had a friend that got invested with Bitcoin a long time ago.
Yeah, when it was $8 a share.
When it was $8 a share. He said how much did he cash out with?
$15 million during COVID.
50.
He made a $4,000 investment when it was $8 a share, but you gave them 250 shares, and then those 250 shares during COVID when it went up to 67,000, whatever Bitcoin went up to, came out to around 15 million. Wow.
$15 million.
$40,000 investment.
$40,000 investment. Then $4,000 investment. He walked out with millions of dollars. So, listen, we don't have the keys to saying, hey, there's not a loss in a lot of situations, right? But you lose money every day when you're not making money, right? Because somehow your money's not working for you. Dre talking about when you sleep and your money working for you, right? Or we talk about the scripture in the Bible about the talents and the parable about God gave the man a coin, right? One went to go hide it, one went to go invest it, and what did the other one do? Right? So you have to use your talents, whatever you have, to invest your money. So today, this is going to be part one of us explaining about finance. We're going to come to you with part two. But I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Please like, comment, and subscribe at the bottom of the page. Thank you for your time. Thank you for joining Lead Men Podcast.